Assalamu alaikum. Hello and welcome everybody. In this short video, I would just like to address a few common mistakes that students tend to make when they're learning Arabic. Let's start with mistake number one. Mistake number one is basically being afraid of making mistakes. You're a student, you're a learner, you're just starting out with something new, so of course you're going to make mistakes. So please don't be worried, don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's only natural. Think of something that you've done for the first time, like playing the piano or maybe riding a bicycle. It took you more than one try, obviously, to get to a level of skill. And secondly is having realistic expectations. So as someone who's beginning to learn a foreign language, you're following international standards, which dictate that to get to at least a beginner's level, you would need a certain number of hours. Let's say for Arabic, somewhere around 200 hours. So just saying, I want to be fluent in Arabic, and you're only doing a weekly 1 hour lesson with a tutor, or you're just studying for 10 minutes, that's not going to be enough. You have to acquire a certain number of hours, and you have to be addressing the 4 skills of foreign language learning. So that's mistake number 3, is that you're not addressing the 4 skills. So maybe you're working on reading, listening, and writing, but you're not working on your speaking skills. When you're trying to study, let's say you're studying 1 hour a day, try to divide your time. So maybe you've done 10 or 15 minutes of listening, you've done some reading, you've done some writing. You have to practice speaking. If you don't have access to maybe a tutor or a language partner, the best way is try to repeat the words and sentences after the person in the video, or just with yourself, literally. The other thing is that you need to keep practicing and reviewing, because according to scientists, after like a couple of days, maybe 7 days, you tend to forget to pretty much 90% of what you've learned. So human memory is not that effective unless we keep practicing. The best way is using spaced repetition, which means you study something for some time, and then you go back and review after a few days, and then you review and review again after a few days. And of course, make your learning engaging and fun. Don't just rely on one source. Try to learn through games, reading, passive listening. Have a bunch and mix of activities for you to do, so you don't get bored and stay focused. And the other mistake is as well, I see many students just learning random vocabulary, and I come across a lot of posts on social media posting about vocabulary that doesn't even connect or make sense when they're together. That's not going to be helpful. You might learn it at now, like at the present moment, but then you're going to forget it later on. So try to have themed vocabulary learning topics. So maybe this week you want to learn about, let's say, office vocabulary, and the second week it's about school-related vocabulary. You can use flashcards, for example. Let's say you're learning about furniture. You can use sticky notes or flashcards to keep them everywhere in the house where you can see them, and try repeating the words. Make them, somewhere where it's visual and accessible to you, having maybe a vision board that would help. And the best way to learn a language is actually through stories. So listening to stories and taking your own notes and learning new vocabulary and using that vocabulary to make new sentences. So not just listening to the story, but actively taking part and engaging with the story by taking notes and making your own sentences. So you'd need a learning journal where every day, if you come across a new word, you're writing down that word and maybe what it means in your language, and you have to try and use that word at least in 2 or 3 sentences. Learning is not as effective if we do not write. So writing is really important, and it actually helps you retain information at least 35% better than if you choose not to write. And by learning through stories, you're actually making that emotional connection with the story and the words, and that will help memory on the long run. So information will move from short-term memory to long-term memory, because as humans, we naturally interact with stories than we just do with, random topics. And my last advice is to have a plan. Let's say at the moment you're just a fresh beginner, so you want to have a realistic and smart plan. That means smart by having a specific goal. For example, in 6 months, I want to reach A level in Arabic, and then by deciding how many hours you need each week or each day to reach that level, and what steps you're going to take. So SMART, S is for having a specific goal, as we've mentioned, and M for being measurable in terms of hours, in terms of resources. How are you going to measure your success? That is, by the end of, like, let's say 6 months, I would have completed so and so hours of learning, and I would pass my Arabic test, or so on. And achievable, that means you have a realistic goal. It's not just a random goal or something that is not attainable. For example, saying, I want to be fluent in Arabic. That's not realistic. You have to specify what level and how many hours and how and when are you going to get there. So a realistic goal, and lastly, time bound, as we've mentioned. So you're actually stating when and how long you need to get there. So these are my few tips for learning Arabic as a foreign language. If you have any questions, any other ideas or suggestions from personal experience, please drop them in the comments box. Thank you.